Phone going down.
I was on you. We all ready to go?
Feel like it's
Yeah, getting the train started.
It's gonna be 6 off.
What's your email again?
Same debate squad at Gmail.
Ignacio, what's yours?
I don't need it.
Alright. Brian, Greenhill Docs.
Spell it out in the keypad.
Thanks, guys.
Red, black, or blue with?
Red. I'm gonna shut these doors.
Please.
Okie doke.
Shut that door there.
Go
Thank
for it.
you.
Can I use your stand?
Yeah.
Send.
All these social networks and these computers. They was talking shit. They some shooting.
Let me know when you're all good. Good, Jharick. Black youth are assumed criminal. That creates police shooting, mass incarceration, violence under 16. Michael Brown was shot and cut for bad. And Red youth run with law enforcement reformation are predictable today. Issue youth criminality linked to the racial path of criminalization of black youth is expansive tonight. Black youth right to a fair justice system, but also right to face a judge and jury. Black boys can be seen responsible for their action. Each one. White boys benefit from the assumption that children are essentially innocent. Denial of youth is linked to denial of innocence. Juvenile plea bargain should not exist. While whites get off, minority youth are placed on a trajectory that creates poverty, educational disparity, and abuse. Lower 16. African American defense were designated as the plea bargain stage. African American defense were significantly more likely to be prosecutors than operatively contextually juvenile justice. It may reconsider the utility of police were removing the plea apparatus being not benefit. Minority youth are being disadvantaged in the process. They are at an increased likelihood of being placed in secure confinement and transferred to adult court community. Multitude of consequences affect individuals' trajectory. Consequences affect collection and future employment, familial strain, educational opportunity, etc. The actual legal factor of race is making its way into the process. First, time offenders can be saved, and juvenile plea bargaining coerces the defendants into claiming guilt or face violent abusive penalties and teaches young children a corrupted view of justice. 88. Equal protection due process are never present concerned with or structurally compatible with the coercion of administration against an individual so that they can make them to be treated with leniency or face a wrath of a formal system will look upon them as uncooperative and untreatable. There are no safeguards. Juvenile justice patronizes or finesses the waiving of rights of juvenile loyalty. So who pronounce it only wants help and says which pretends to be sympathetic yet forces juveniles into foster homes and institutions where they are abused, raped, and even murdered. But justice is reduced healing, suddenly disrespect for law enforcement, bad to amnesty to teaches children to change a corrupted view of what law and justice are in democracy, a cynical lesson never forgotten. And this process is part and parcel of the juvenile justice system's pathologization of black youth. Ground 7. Risk classification of pathologizing criminalized youth of color. The juvenile court acted to extend power concentrate on their urban nature impulses remade within current contemporary policies crime control that create rational actor criminals out of a definite juvenile systemic bias legitimated by objective assessment influence of criminal activity. Then the politics of crime demonstrate the ways but emotional rhetoric combined with managerial imperatives that obscure social control strategies that reinforce historical ideologies of race and recent regression of juvenile court interpretation criminals of population distinguished by particular race types and attributes of offending implicit justification effects context in which risk and threat are normatively defined as a product of urban spaces. The app endorses a method of individual insurrection against juvenile plea bargaining to refuse a criminalization of black youth. Debating solutions is an iterative process that uses academy as a site of movement building that creates a bulwark against Trump fashions. In Taylor 17, we enter into a period of uncertainty. Trump policy will make life substantially harder. His administration will attack immigrants, continue assaults on black and brown communities, cohort declared war and Muslim. We have seen a revival of the white supremacist right with uncertainty. The extent to which Trump will follow through the uncertainty is based on a calculated speculation that our ability to organize and build movements will thwart the agenda. This possibility exists only when we recognize the academy as a site of politics and struggle. Whether or not we see them as political, the right wing certainly does scholarship. Although it's not politics, there is a need to connect resistance, struggle, and transformation with students desperately looking for hope. The future is not already written. We have already seen an eruption, mass struggle, Occupy, and BLM. Trump will demand more than moral outrage. It requires a strategy. We must create spaces for debate. Politics and ideas matter. This does not suggest that we should all meet disagreement, but be clear about differences discovered through debate. Struggles not easily attended in an atmosphere of defeat. Political establishment want to punish the voices for black liberation. They want to bury the legacy, history, and politics of the movement. Black struggles can upend and destabilize the supposed center. The Black Freedom Movement became a platform for other liberation struggles. The challenge continue to lie in our ability to transcend through argument, debate, and struggle to pass that divide or resistance. This is a call for solidarity, not on the basis of paper and over different experiences or ways are connected. Injury to one is injury to all. Another world is possible only if we struggle for it. Absent, engage in violence. The alternative is Trump's fascism. Green 17. We cannot simply react to Trump and advance the clear program that can mobilize a huge swath of the public with vast work against the far right flanks of the platform waiting to be used to spur genuine debate and action. Protest against white supremacy must be tied to political programs. Talking about the ways in which we use class, gender, and racial discrimination hurts everyone by looking at them as concrete demands. We can reach out to people who are galvanized but may not know what needs to be done next. Necessary for improving political conditions, which has to be done before more transformative changes. Strong left expands the public sphere and offering a broader conception of what's politically possible. The most potent antidote to the far right is an effective left that will have to concern itself with long-term planning, organizing implicit biases and automatic thought function, which is not pre-social. Changing material conditions can affect those processes. Matthew 15. Implicit biases operate outside human awareness. Social knowledge is reinforced and adopted. Familiar contextual setting activity. Judgment. Implicit biases operate automatically from images and commentary and discussion that encounters or experiences. Information unconsciously stored. It becomes stored group knowledge. Study after study confirms that negative imagery informs implicit biases. And political ontology as a basis for critique gives way to socially weightless FYIs that ignore and devalue lived experience. Problem-driven approaches to structural inequality that denaturalize lived expression or heat avoid solipsistic, internally propelled ontological accounts. McNay 17. Ontology lapses in socially weightless theorizing that recludes the social power apparent and insufficient attention paid to particularities of lived oppression. Structures of inequality are taken into the bodies and lived as human natural dispositions. Experience is always mediated through power. This requires careful analysis between embodied reality and material and symbolic relation. Political ontologies embody self-enclosed theorizing the intellectual reification that produces exclusionary ways of viewing the world. The important capacity for self-reflection curtailed by suspension of sociality, insulated from the external standpoint that delivers an epistemic shock to frictionless theoretical views. Arguments are repelled by internal logic of ontology rather than social context. Ontologically crowded theories remain self-perpetuating. The power first approach continue to be of importance for entrenched inequality. They are deepening. It's important not to give up on the moment. It seeks to answer a question not by identifying constitutive dynamics of political being, but scrutinize social distance to dislodge appearances natural and reveal contingency. Critique as problem rather than paradigm-driven, rooted in social theoretical rather than ontological abstraction. As engaged social critic chips away at problems through producing an account that has a practical aim of unmasking domination, contributing to gradual actualization of other ways of being.
My stand is here.
Sure.
Everyone good?
Right, move your left. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's probably a good bet. Why vote app?
Because the AF's a good idea.
Okay, what's the role of the negative?
To say the AF's a bad idea.
How do we do that?
We make weighing arguments.
So how do you weigh between certain things?
Sure,
You're
I think
literally saying,
I think the affirmative has made arguments for what it advocates for, and the way it does that are good and produce good outcomes.
how do you
can
weigh
negate
between
that.
black people dying? They seem all to be bad.
Sure, I'd say 4 black people dying is worse than 5. The idea
So
that oppression
you, as
is
a
non-
white guy, get to count how many black people die?
No, but the idea that oppression is just non-unique and increase in oppression doesn't matter is something that 1AC vigorously disagrees with.
Okay, that's fine. The affirmative advocacy.
Yes.
What makes you in a position to call for such a refusal?
Because
Why should we trust you with?
Sure, we don't force anyone to take upon it, but rather propose a political
So
methodology.
you're not forcing the judges to vote for you?
I mean, the judges vote for the app if they think it's a good methodology. I don't force it upon anyone.
Is the method the only question that matters?
No, I think if juvenile plea bargaining is something that should be there should be an individual insurrection against juvenile plea bargaining, then they should
Okay.
vote affirmative.
Back to my question though, why should we trust you with?
What do you mean, why should you trust me? We presented
I mean,
arguments
white
and
people
causal
throughout
claims.
history have been like, you know what, you should trust me, I'm liberating all of you, especially
Sure.
during the civil rights movement. What is different about your act?
Sure, 2 responses. First is we disagree that history is solely regress and there have been no moments of progress. The
This is
second
about
argument
history.
is
This is about white people.
yes,
Psychological
We're not just
incentive.
saying follow us into like the glorious revolution. We've presented
Really? Because your own evidence.
Do you want me to
especially-
finish what I'm
The Taylor evidence literally talks about calling for solidarity. Why do you as a white guy get to do that?
No, the Taylor evidence says we should propose political solutions.
I'm reading
to
lines
challenge-
out of the card. Call for solidarity.
Yes, we
Why
think
do you get to do
solidarity
that
would
way?
be good. People don't have to join the movement. We don't force anyone to. But rather the idea that we propose something good,
Okay,
and if the
that's
judges
fine.
think that's good, then they should vote out.
You've been reading court staff, UTILAFs, tricks even, all throughout this tournament and throughout this topic. Why do you decide now to finally start talking about black people?
Our AF is
Is it
literally
because our
entirely
three black
about black.
judges are
The
now
court's
in front
AF
of
is
us?
literally entirely about black people. And additionally, like, I read this against Rex in front of
that's
a
fine,
panel of
and
three
you
white
changed
judges.
entirely with this context.
I
But
disagree.
why? Okay, that's fine then. The AF's method itself, though, debating solutions. What happens when you vote AF?
The judges say the AF is a good idea.
Sure.
Sure,
so
we've made
they
arguments for why
endorse-
debating things within political context are
Okay,
good.
that's
I'm
fine.
sure you'll read arguments
What does it
for
mean
either
to be
not.
juvenile?
To be underage.
Okay, so everyone who is underage.
Sure,
is
the
the
arg-
AF,
when
right?
we say
How do you
juvenile
decide-
in the AF,
how do you
we're
decide
referring-
age with?
Sure, when we're talking about juvenile in the AF, we're talking about the legal definition, people who go to juvenile courts. Obviously, that's not determined by us, rather the criminal justice system. We say people who that.
So the
who-
criminal justice system
Yes,
in the
we say
racist
people
state
that
gets
see-
to decide. So what about black people who are always deemed older than what they really are?
Yes, the AF would not solve for that. Okay, but I still think that's a good idea.
Send me the doc. There will be one card right on paper. I'll hand it to you afterwards. Sure. Let me know when you get it.
How many pieces of paper I need?
4 off. 4?
Can you give me some more paper? Anybody else need some more?
Yeah, I need one. Appreciate it.
Is it just the off?
What?
Is it just for off?
Yes. 4 off in case.
Oh, is there somewhere in particular you want me to start on case, or should I just go straight down?
You can go straight down.
All right, for sure. Give me 2 seconds. Blue or black?
Black.
Okay.
I assume the three where it's empty is where you'll read that card on paper. I assume there's an empty heading. I'm pretty sure.
No, the card will be right on the first card. The third off is
Black.
Everyone good?
Hold on 1 second. I gotta turn up the brightness on my phone. Alright, you good, fam?
Don't trust white missionaries, Wilderson. A. Comfortable for white people, the individual strikes wrong, the fair play, the white person, safety, because I'm a good person, I'm a fair person, treat everyone equal, the rules apply to everyone, the whole, I think we treat everyone equal, is only slightly more than the discussion, we can treat everyone equal, the fair and balance is odious, as we are in control, whites are guilty, reproduce constantly fairness, meritocracy, balance, stages, norms, harmony between races, guilty, wants stability, and reform, guilty, of actions of the question, how can we maintain the maximum order with the minimum amount of change? Good people can touch diversity, play the intellectual, a real necessary and tactics of way that white people are able to go and feel better for having made a better place for everyone. White people love their jobs and institutions, so all love each other. Every black and brown body that doesn't love their love is thirsty. You love each other. Past will have a way for incorporate black and brown bodies to drive between white people are guilty of structure, abuse, reproduce, institution, reproduce. American makers always everywhere. A bad thing that terms never on people's love distractions. Too high white liberals and unable to experience guilt, selfish, callous, and having totally discovered rights about the overwhelming scientific shows of white Europeans as psychopaths. Right, 84. In a bullfight after being brutalized, the bull of his staffers who's only moved to be as bodily starts to real systematic this movement to experience black people besides all in that situation. Not just your blacks have been charging that banner something. White Matadors, the banner bearer represents justice. Time for blacks to look at the man and white psychopaths, their behavior reflects an underlying biological traits, but the psychopath is constantly unable to experience gifts completely selfish, supported by other people, set together, turns the case, meaning to cannot trust liberation within the firm's called to any sort of demands for revolutionary pleas and helping black people that refuse criminalization. Exactly what we criticize that no matter what their consequences affirmative, this is a question of their scholarship and how they represent this, the fact that they do not confront their own positionality with the one proves our argument about how white people are always papering over and move towards settler innocence that denies the assumption of affirmative is automatically presumed negative. Second off, I advocate the affirmative without the use of the term juvenile. Blacks despite have potential, but that potential is always limited in the way blacks people's categories anagrammatically ruptured, they remain a mark for abjection. Sharp 16. Africans practice to hold the truth of the market differently sense to weight property middle passage to coffee level and that has first over time district black maternal these mental like these slaves should hold these prisons turn to American and domestic middle passage black must still usher the children the conditions the nonsense of non-being instability the ship versus blacks black working and remains in as whole people now the incarcerated women in the US and forced to give back well shackled their parent ignored even when that shackles against law belonging to human project continue to feel and be fall out of the grammatical gender falls away human proliferate and the U.S. girl doesn't mean girl, but a prosecutor felon boy doesn't mean boy, a Hulk Hogan, gunman, thug, urban youth, mother doesn't mean mother, but felon, defender, a burglar, a terror, black lips, and forced to breach, mother, life, family, relation, loose, and innocence, given beta any arbitrary removal by populations. The affirmative endorsement term juvenile ignores how it papers over how blacks always represent the older when black people are viewed as thugs and young. White males are also a terminal self-defense, which means that they would never actually have trials. But juveniles don't refer to black people, rather white people. This also approves the link to our first op. Third off. Ask yourselves, why did it would take out 90% of the policy version of this after replace it with criminalization, refutation, as well as other impacts that are just why did he suddenly stop reading courts that people have soft-left stuff throughout entire tournament and finally decide to confront and start talking about black people just because there are three black judges through. This is the reason that black people literally can't prove that they're good judges. In fact, it impacts how why black people are always viewed as presumptions for policy debate. This is no better than racial profiling that always makes the assumption that black people are no better to judge anything but K debates. You expected us to read one off, but why can't I judge a good debate? Why can't Jharick read a good policy in order of exactly why you can't trust him on these issues? Can't you why black people are denied jobs at debate camps literally because they are viewed as nothing better than the judging and critique debate. The fact that you have process and purpose is exactly what our criticism endorses. The next off text, I'll endorse the advocacy when I see without the attempt to weigh. Kapati explains that trying to weigh between black and brown lives always reproduces logic to enable violence. The first, we have to relearn and remount the theory of American policy, make the order, articulate violence, and act on certain bodies. Kapati 16. Workins that highlights unrecorded wage of the material resistance and pure minds erupts the equity space exchange process flexibility that allow upon the presumption and natural interpretation of the way of discovering violent corporate process working on a racialized population, not only the sensory life of empire, but also the sedimentation different forms of lines over time we achieve better conceptual clarity on the operations of minds by isolating modes of active transmission circumvent them virtual appearance of deaths or livable for unbelievable lives of relations that produces experience of failure of enumeration and content duration that understands say violence of population with affordable constructive force of positive framing of loss can always contain what these dominant representations of the most visible and conventional representations natural field of capture and amalgamation and memory and imagination field of lives outside the visual arc of this sense of memories and feelings that project affective attachment like imagine the impoverishment of fearland logic sophisticated discourse of terrorism militarism the war proven in cross-country elimination where he literally says to weigh between the consequences and how much black people die. You don't get to count up the lives of 4 or 5 black people that die. You don't get to weigh the consequences for what happens when every black life is one reproduced by genocide or substructure of white and tax system that always seeks to replicate itself throughout the law system itself. Your participation with this construction and general justice means you do not get to serve the abstract representation, especially since it kills any sort of absence on this ground argument. The affirmative.
Start with the underview thing, the last part.
This is literally our weight argument. This is a preemption to white political ontology. Just because they're ever Africans to have black culture doesn't mean that the only thing that black people are valuable for is just reading critique arguments that proves how you position yourself in terms of black justice and expected one-off debate that reproduces the same violent logic throughout the debate as an institution, as anti-black space that always forces black debate confined to the sole logic. This is why black people are not want the TOC and LD, or this is why black people don't get for and arguments just because they can't read policy arguments. They are always supposed to respect criticism. Second, we are not political ontology, where this are performed in dissent by Sharp's analysis of a soft ontological study that is about anagrammatical blackness policy and how we theorize ourselves in the education within the afterlife of slavery, which means that we could take us to Wilderson itself.
Plan top down.
Starting on the Taylor 17 episodes of the plan, this literally talks about how you get to call for solidarity. You should ask yourself, why do white people who are psychopathic in nature as society get to call for solidarity when they're the ones reproducing the same violent structures and taxes that always reproduces black death? The green card about genuine debate. This is another link where you define what genuine debate entails, which is always oriented ones of white policy, traditional debate, or tricks and LD that always reproduces the same violence. The Matthew card is, again, this is just a process that we should not trust with. Win a presumption argument, then you don't get the affirmative case. Your app also does nothing. Your own author conceits of policy even if you weren't teaching quantity that academics should read more lower 16. Scholars study race and juvenile justice should also think account theories of social object, political sense of success, even Jharick Shields, or just reason confirm the permanence race and again real about racism is doubtful. That one policy set of policy that affecting change will really comment series of juvenile criminals, racial series and juvenile justice is always likely. Economic structure perpetuating while we respond even modest change in cut car. That changes also takes out your planner and used to be reasons because you just talks about pathologization, but that is not what the affirmative does. You concede in cross-examination act literally does nothing when you just get the ballot to affirm your own capacity. Will actually critique that because you only talk about black suffering when it's profitable for you in the context of this round. Just because black judges also means that you don't get any other offense because because the plan does not solve it. If you as illusory and only the scholarship of the one to see matters. Taylor argument agrees with this by students in debate and black bridges which charges those based on predictable trial after the selfish supercharge and to the pursuit of those thinking voice trial altogether can now 16. Black minors in New Jersey are further like to prosecute as adults. Minor sympathies although they're subject adults and minors are such an adult prison minors are tried and adult to prosecute being stretched with some catches black they accept this because black minors control for nature offenses and black educational history.
Democratic history?
Sure.
You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Status of the offs.
The first one, the shark one, is conditional.
Okay.
The Kapati one is dispositional. If you straight turn it, I have to go.
What's
for
a
it.
straight turning? Like if I win that.
If you say that Wayne is good, like
Okay.
counting up lies, whatever. you
What
wanna
would
do,
count
whatever.
as something like that's outside of that?
What do you mean?
Like,
Just straight turn it, dude. It's offense.
Sure.
If you win
Sounds
offense,
good.
I have to go for it.
Sure. So I guess why did you read this in front of 3 black judges? I broke this AF against a panel of 3 white judges against a white person. So I guess I'm confused why you make like allusions to like continually reading like arguments not about blackness.
Well, I get that, but you also read different apps about like pork clog and different polls.
What apps have I read about pork clog? The only 2
The
apps I've
crash
read on this
one.
topic are this one and the clog one, which is written.
Yeah,
by
and your
au-
teammates have also read like util, cyber apps, all
Wait,
of that stuff.
wait, Mike.
It seems like as a general orientation,
because
your school
Ryan-
has approached something in terms. Yes. What is your question?
Ryan read a cyber app round 1 of Berkeley just because he wanted to read an Afro September, October. Other than that, the only apps Brentwood has read are about blackness. So I guess I'm just
Great,
kind
so
of
then why
confused.
have you preempted like us reading Afro-pessimism just because now you can finally start talking about black people in front of black judges?
Sorry? It's because, okay, I guess your past 2 and ours, this tournament, what were they?
Yes, Afro-pessimism.
Every single
You're
one?
correct.
Cool. You
I've
say
also read
without
like
the
a whole
word.
ton of diss ads and everything on my wiki.
Sure.
Just because I've only done that this tournament doesn't mean like I would.
Sure,
hold
you
it
advocate
against
the
you.
affirmative without the
Doesn't
term
really make sense.
juvenile.
Yeah.
So are you a youth insurrection against the general criminal justice system, or what does it mean to do it without the word juvenile?
Just be plea bargaining.
Just plea bargaining? Cool, so, I guess,
Like,
how
it's
does that account
it's
for like
the
the spec?
affirmative, it would be the affirmative without the like rhetoric of juvenile, because we think that rhetoric ignores how blackness is always never perceived as juvenile itself, especially in the context of black males, right? When you have and see a black male police officer is like, oh, you're a thug, you're this, you're that, you're older than you
Yes,
actually
and it seems
are.
like our Sutter evidence in the one I see talks about how like the denial of youth and the refusal to say that black children exist is tied to like this loss of judge and a jury. So I guess
Yes, and you
why,
still
why
fall
does
into
just
the same
abdicating
trap of
any
using the
demands on
term
that?
juvenile and in the context of that. I don't.
Okay,
what's your
so
question?
for I guess what the criminal justice system calls the juvenile justice system, what does the counterplan do for that?
I mean, I don't think that's relevant to the counterplan. Our argument is just a critique of your use of the word
Use of the
juvenile,
term juvenile.
especially in the context of like a plan. We think that also changes like the function of how the 1AC is interpreted,
Sure.
especially like since, you know, if there are no juvenile black males, then what does the plan do for black people? Nothing.
Okay, I'll take that on. Sorry, did you read an argument on the first off?
Do you still need this?
No.
No.
So what's the implication, I guess?
You're a psychopath.
Okay.
I'm kidding. Just white people are psychopaths in general. You should not
Fair.
trust him, though.
So I guess you read these arguments about how like whites have a libidinal investment in anti-blackness, but you say you don't read arguments for ontology.
Well, it's
I
not
guess
just a
how
lib-
does that
it's-
investment arise?
The right argument isn't necessarily like libidinal. It's also just like a psychological analysis. So
Yes,
right
and how do
is
those
talking about-
psychological structures arise?
What do you mean?
Where do those psychological structures arise from? Like, when does society impose that psychopathy upon certain people?
Like life before born psychopaths, we'll say.
Okay. What does it mean to be black?
The descendant middle passage.
A descendant of cool. So I guess, does that include like people from Africa who immigrated
I
after
don't
the
know,
Middle
like,
Passage?
you read an app about black people, you should know this, but.
All right, 55 seconds. Case offs in order.
See, right when I did my thing, I really wanted to You don't want me to do it.
Could you remind me of the 1C order again? I'm sorry.
The
For the offs.
the psychopathy stuff.
Okay.
The without the term juvenile.
Okay.
Then the why did you read this?
Okay.
And then the Wayne dad.
Thank you.
Dachshund.
Yeah, you sent the wrong document. But it's okay. You sent the wrong document, but it's okay.
What?
You sent the wrong document, but it's okay.
Oh, I did?
Yeah. He's a state's counterplan in here, unless that's what you're about to do.
Yeah,
That's from round
that was
one.
round one. Yeah.
By all means, if you want to run a state's counterplan, that'd be interesting. It would get interesting.
Yes.
It's like shit. The 1AC was something, but then the counterplan,
sorry, I
the 1
just
AR,
sent the
they
correct
go
one.
for that.
That might be the weirdest decision I ever had to make.
Like, yeah, I voted ass on the counter plan. I think the state solved the negative.
Everyone good? That was a good idea to prevent hundreds of thousands of black kids from a lifetime of damnation, juvenile penalties, destroy the possibility of employment, access to healthcare, education opportunity, and a host of other programs that matter. Even if anti-blackness is structural, or there isn't an ability to resist, ability for black kids to be able to straight up survive matters. Black kids are already powerless, and the AF is a form of individual resistance that refuses a legal system via an insurrection, which helps back for other arguments. That outweighs we've justified their method, and they've conceded it. 8-point social movements we've organized a fact that informs blackness today. The AF can propel broader movement building. This is offense because we check Trump in fashion, which is a Taylor evidence academic. These are key sites for political organizing, create strategy to check Trump. The AF is a successful transition to act and propel social change, which is Taylor. They've conceded that the Taylor evidence, which is that absent debate about specific political solutions that are able to challenge anti-blackness, alt-right will fill in and lead to bad solutions, which answers all their arguments insofar as we should have read things like the Court Log Act, and that proves at least abdication of discussions of blackness from within important discussion. B point, the process of movement building outweighs and turns all their alternatives of far rights encroaching on academic spaces, which the AF can solve, which is the green evidence. Their arguments they make on case versus the lower evidence we don't solve. Yes, honesty does not solve everything, but the process of movement building, it creates does. Second, the idea that black people are denied youth. This is our sudden evidence. The idea that there is no black youth is tied to the issue of youth criminality and the lack of a judge and jury which AF checks against. I'll extend a few arguments. First is conceded Matthews evidence. First, you said you're not ontology. That doesn't matter. The argument is that it's not ontological or contingent. It's able to be changed by structural factors, which answers juvenile pick because it shows it's able to change things to the other extensions. The first up. They say white's bad. First, this is answered by our implicit bias argument. Even if whites are psychopathy, that doesn't mean it's unable to change anything, which is the absence of it is worse. Evaluate our arguments, not our persona. Insofar as we prevented a useful mechanism of political organizing, you should endorse it, which is all our offense. This is all offense. Alt weaponizes whites for good, denouncing their role that leaves the field open for Trumpism and fashion. Taylor 17. Trump has gotten people's escape to deflect white workers' attention. White supremacy, but intended to disguise class and economic anxiety creates condition for dangerous demagogues like Trump's use racist while their opportunity to create a multiracial opposition. You need a left of the not just down to real groups of workers, hopefully racist, but engage with them. Also, often the left is a condescending attitude that leaves it open for the right to write or an explanation. Even if their thesis is correct, it doesn't mean we shouldn't act against each. 12. Tyranny is not meant to encourage abstract association with philosophical nihilism, throwing their hands up gestures of ultimate failure of cynicism. This is not meant to hateful action critique through understanding white action takes place within a systemic context. That does not mean one does not believe in something different. I do not think being a white anti-racist is an oxymoron. Rather, being a white anti-racist stifles tension, but not futility from the side. Whites continue to reimagine ourselves. We're not saying that we should be the leader heads of the movement, rather providing a useful political organizing strategy, which is all the method stuff on the K. The juveniles. This is answered by our past evidence. The idea that black youth do not exist and we should not try to attempt to resolve the criminal juvenile justice system is all of our offense. It leads to structural neglect. The question of not having juveniles. We also do the counterplan. We only say black youth in the context of actual people, but rather juveniles in the context of the juvenile justice system. Refusing any material organizations and strategies which check actual structures in the status quo is bad because it prevents us from actually doing anything to solve it. Next off. You say, why did you read this? First of all, we've read it because all of your tunners have been pessimistic about their tournament. We wrote this against a white person in front of 3 white judges, and when Viren was reading Afropest the entire Berkeley, we also read this version of F, even though there's only 1 black judge on the panel. The argument that we read our arguments only in terms of black in front of black judges is categorically incorrect. Every single F we've read this topic, every single F I've read this topic has been about blackness, whether it's from authors like Michelle Alexander or authors like Lower. The Wayne Bad arguments, materialism good, that's all the conceited stuff. Ontological framings that deny that there is any structural reality that affects black people is bad because it locks in a cycle of damnation. The idea that there is no uniqueness to oppression in the status quo maybe it is more of a 2012 Florida tricks debater strategy than an actual one. Ontological structures are bad because we can't decide. Obviously, there are forms of black suffering that should be weighed against, that are important. The idea that we can't simply weigh between genocide and individual action is flawed.
down the steps. So go out here, go past the pool, it's right down the steps.
Yeah. I was like, damn, they got nippies.
It did get cold.
I'm not built for this.
Wanna take the shoulder?
No, meaning like it makes college today make much more sense. Because now it explains why people can move into this, they're explaining the case like this as now. I was like, I get it.
He's come from high
Riding
school.
away.
Yeah.
Cheap ass nigga. You know how much time I spent building a liquor my day with you? There's a reason why we only had 2. Niggas, I got 45 fucking minutes.
You sure?
Damn. And then you find out the rebuttal how they developed the gap on you. That's hell. That shit used to blow me up. I was just like, yeah, I wish I had the same fucking brush or I'd be waxing.
Shit, back.
I lose a whole day. It was good. Activate was great. I definitely stood up black people eyes, but I think sorry.
Got this damn song stuck in my head, man. Computers by Roddy Revel and Bobby Smurdy.
Nigga.
Niggas talking shit. Computers. Niggas talking shit. What, they some shooters? He said I'm sliding on, he said slide on the roof when I shoot. I think that I'm Tom Cruise. But bitch, I'm Bobby with the tool. I shot at you.
Alright.
What happened in that debate? I don't know, what happened?
They said a bunch of stuff basically. Oh, establishing one? No, that's
Blue Valley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
They just random.
That too, but like, I told him, I'm West, that's what happened. Apparently it was like a bunch of just like small little impact turns that didn't really have no actual impact, nor any like lane comparison. And like they, in every speech they went to like all 5, so it wasn't really contextualized anywhere. So it just like goes around.
So, okay.
Yeah, the overwhelming strategy, everything at the wall.
Pasta party. Pasta party. Someone gonna stick. Someone gonna stick.
I hate that fucking strategy.
Toss this.
Oh, ass damn debate coaches. Starting to put y'all into a motherfucking practice. You can work little fixes and learn how to get that shaggy ass shit to them.
Damn,
I'm with the pro debates at the TLC. Nigga, see me on the other side. Holla at me, cuz. Think you trash. You ain't your host,
Don't
y'all
worry.
pedagogical approach to debates. Garbage.
Don't none of these kids want that shit, man.
I'm talking about the damn coaches. Come get this work,
Don't want them
nigga.
coaches, none of them coaches. Only coaches that want sauce is coaches that you already know would want sauce anyway. It's like Elijah would take you up on that. Elijah would take you up on that just cause he not gonna run for no debate.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. He'll take you up on that.
Kapati.
You know what I'm saying? If you do the
Missionaries, this is the case.
debate me. No. Why? I retired.
You get the goddamn strategy for kids these days. They retire because it work.
You hear it every weekend. That's not retirement.
Right.
People supposed to take a break during
Bad
retirement.
strategy. Come get this work. The Browns get fired for bad strategy, nigga. What's up? Can I get your job? Pink slips, nigga. Come on now. We know we say the institute's more hard black people, but come on, that means you gotta donate your check every week. I'm with
So
it.
need to deposit in this account.
We gonna fuck around like that's extortion.
Yes.
I'm like, no, it's reparations.
Right.
You just agreed to it.
extortional reparations. That's what
You can't see me doing an argument.
it is what it is. Pay me. Alright, what we doing?
The Capadia pick,
Which argument is that?
Forfop. So that is the Wayne pick.
Okay.
And then the white missionaries just had first off, right?
Okay.
And then the case. Everyone good?
Hmm?
Lesson of this debate is you can't spend 30 seconds on a pick that solves the entirety of the case. They basically drop this argument. It's not responsive for any of our answers. They have no offense on this game. The counter resolves 100% of the case, endorses the entirety of the applicant and any risk of net benefit outweighs. We still access the same movement, but just without a weight or any of the weighing calculus that the affirmative posits and attempts to weigh between black and brown lives. This is a missionary dissent. It's also a net benefit since we don't have weight involved in the white revolutionaries. But on the extension proper, the Capadia evidence is amazing on this question when you try to count black and brown lives just like you did in cross-examination about how whether we weigh between the impacts and how we calculate under a policy rule of the ballot in the question of anticipation is just replicating multiple impacts for a Y that quantifies and trivializes the lives of black and brown suffering. There's three impacts to this argument. First is that it results of the war on terror. Capadia is talking about how in a face of violence is just justified, how securitization of which is a bigger danger, which is the root cause of how the war on terror operates, which indicates that we have this context for how this is a justification that leads to genocidal violence and how it is replicated at external out-of-wild impacts, which is exactly what our argument is. Second, impacts is deems some lives as always ungrievable just because some black people are accounted more than others means that certain individuals are always ignored and thrown under the bus, which indicates that it turns the affirmative case as well because movements are never inclusive of each other. It fractures these coalitions so that they can never access their solvency. But the third argument is that it reduces and trivializes black people down to numbers, their memories and affect resistance, and prevents any sort of contextualization for how it operates, which again not only fractures coalitions but also ensures that they have a structural accessibility that is not accessible to black people because they are never incentivized to participate in these movements. To challenge white supremacist logistical structure, your argument's proper. You say we're not material, we deny structural reality, but one, we are material. We just say look at the geographies, the histories, and affects that you're using the decision calculator instead of weighing people's lives. But second of all, it's not a question of materiality. We still solve the entirety of the case because we endorse the same movement. It's just a question of how your impact framework, which is the representations come first, that was conceded. The arguments about his non-unique oppression literally does not apply. We say yes, oppression happens, but we should not count bodies in the process. You say you should weigh the case of how this is a genocide versus individuals, but one, this is not inevitable. This is when posed based on a white cognitive framework that always tries to count black bodies, especially presuming the inherent value of whiteness itself. But second of all, does not account for how we can have alternative mechanisms. Commodity is great about this. We can still use affects to make decisions, which means there's no policy paralysis in any context. The disaff. Game over on this issue. Your confrontation of this positionality and the Wilson evidence indicates that this crushes the movement itself. White people are psychopaths, should not be trusted. The status and positionality of Witt's position for individual resistance, exactly one that creates a feel-good politics that only maintains order within a change, creates passive revolutions, and only ensures that white people can just maintain order with the minimal amount of change possible. This argument devastates his case arguments in two implications. First, you can presume negative. Do not trust anything that he sees in the tour. Every time he talks about how you should say and count up the number of times he says he's liberatory or is a good strategy, because white people have always claimed that in the civil rights movement, in every anti-war movement, in every coalitional group, they've claimed that, and yet we are still living in an anti-black world. There is no progress under that the affirmative uniquely creates. But second of all, this turns the case because it ensures that we can never trust white people in terms of individual resistance, because they always crush the revolution. They turn their back upon black people, which disregards the authority of any sort of arguments. The line by line, you say implicit biases can change, but this proves our argument. Wilders talks about how there's libidinal investments in the context of implicit biases, which means you never confine your psychological investment. The fact that he never even talks about how Witt is a white person is probably a reason that he does not engage in a body politics that actually understands how his own positionality implicates the advocacy that he contextualizes. The second argument here is that Wilders, even then Wright, talks about how psychopathically, even not on a libidinal level, biases can still replicate themselves, and how black people are always forced to confront the matador in these instances, turning into psychopathic logics that that can only replicate anti-black minds. The second argument are how arguments do not influence a persona. This is nonsensical when you want that persona shapes the argument itself. It's relevant to your advocacy and crossplay the case turns our analysis here. You should not ignore this or just throw this onto the bus. Second of all, arguments and persona are both relevant, but persona comes towards you conceded a case of prior question, especially on a representational performative level, because that influences the balance versus referendum on what we do in this round. The words that come into your mouth, if you say the N-word, then you deserve to lose. This is nothing different like that, but the Taylor evidence itself, one, it literally justifies just being nice to white people, which is obviously the context and buys back and proves the link to our white revolutionary argument. Second of all, backlash is non-nuclear already, so readily lashed on how denormalized and contextualized is third. The Taylor evidence is offense for us because this white works to be allies. The black only the abandoned obvious circles of white, subversive black folk allowed to white and run labor, unions and oppression. Poor white people folks have lynching parts of church as a recreation, not the ways that poor white people vote for Trump to do this to prove that they're under no circumstances can they be trusted. Their Yancey argument also gets them absolutely nowhere. It literally says what white people minds are literally formed over and against black like the interest. Yancey agrees with it. It's a critique at the point which they talked about how it is a framing of ontological thesis which their critique is not dispossessing and their arguments do not apply in this context. The case. You'll go for reasons why ontology disproves the elliptical analysis, but that is not contextual. You can read the evidence about political ontology, not argument about psychopathy and how right is contextualized to the nature of white people's historical relations to blackness from European exploration, to child slavery, to lynching, academic Jim Crow, and the ongoing struggle against black police brutality, prison, industrial complex when it comes to black folks. White people are always unworthy psychopaths. Argument force them to confront the historical analysis of the question. They say Taylor in specific debates will solve, but one we are a material solution. That was about a second. This is just a backlash for a while. They already fill in, but they already done so. That's non-unique. The arguments on the overview are all solved by the resolvability of the entirety of the critique. This round comes down to whether or not you think which should be trusted. When they've conceded that white people are psychopaths and probably should not engage in these same revolutionary demands, and in impact framing, we've won several net benefits. They have no offense.
55 seconds.
I want you to follow the rules. I'm the greatest referee alive.
And negative, and I will make you follow the rules. It's like, I wasn't gonna follow the rules when I showed up in Kentucky. Make you think that this round gonna make me change my mind. You think I'm gonna go back and prep because you said the father was here? You're right. Let me go back there. Psych.
Case, it's going to be an overview mostly on the framing stuff. Then it's going to be Wayne, Bath, and Whites. But I think a lot of the stuff in the overview is like in the context of that stuff. The far right is encroaching onto academic spaces and the status quo. Only way to solve backward is political debate that can materialize actual solutions to oppression that can produce liberatory strategies. Only the process of iterating and on rigorous aptitudes that can be able to provide rigorous solutions to both people on the fields as well as academic students looking for more information are able to solve. All of this evidence was conceded. The Taylor evidence and Green says that in the absence of any political debate or any advocacy for material solutions, then it's impossible to create any movements, and the far right will encroach on academic spaces. This was all conceded, and insofar as we win that, it takes out both their odds because their model of debate and their world of apathy makes it impossible to do any of those things. They only have two responses to our specific methods. First, they say that the alt-right is already encroaching. Yes, this is true, and it's our uniqueness argument. Insofar as that's true, only a process that can incorporate, use, and learn how to debate and advocate for solutions outside of it is able to solve back for all of it. You say it's not contextualized in the context of that. I'll do the specific reasons why these arguments take out theirs on the specific flows, but their movement of apathy is unable to solve that. Insofar it denounces any role of students in being able to do it, and it prevents any comparison of political advocacy. So next up.
They have fundamentally misunderstood what we mean by white, and the distinction is that we should be able to weigh between different political apathies, determine what the best solutions are, and through the process of debate, determine whether that's a good or a bad idea. That was the contextualization from the start of cross-examination. The idea that all oppression is necessarily the same might be a good idea, but it's fundamentally a flawed political strategy. The idea that there's no differences between apathies that can produce material differences for specific people is fundamentally flawed. Their idea, yes, of course, that we shouldn't just count up the number of bodies, but the idea that some political solutions are better than others is flawed. It's also conceded by all their arguments, like the idea that they read a counterplan without that proves they are committed to the idea of weighing between different advocacies. Insofar as that's true, or Taylor evidence takes all of it out. The idea that we shouldn't try to compare advocacies and do good things is taken out. A few of their arguments, first they say it results in the war on terror. This is a result of pain in all lives is no different, and restricting people of any rights. You say it trivializes people in numbers. No, that's a misunderstanding of what we meant by Wayne. You said it seemed some lives is ungrievable. That's not true. We should make political advocacies because everything entails trade-off. There is no ethical purity. Only a politics can realize politics does have trade-offs, and we do need to find solutions that's able to solve the don't trust white missionaries. It doesn't link to our counterplan insofar as they don't reject that, and insofar as it does that, but it's also answered by our Taylor evidence. The idea that white should have no role in political organizing may be effectively good, and it may even be theoretically good, but ultimately leaves the world open for the alt-right. What is the cause of when he talks about poor whites being bad to black people? It's because they're structurally alienated from political discussions. Only that that's not it's only it be able to be resolved by incorporation into political discussion. The idea that there is some way to change back for that, only political solutions, which is our Taylor evidence, is able to do that. Anything else may be effectively good, but it fails as a political strategy. The implicit bias argument answers their libidinal investment. It shows that material conditions are able to change through things like debate,